This story comes from a place near my friend's old neighborhood. Let's just call it Rani Nagar to protect the real name for privacy reasons. Now, I can't verify 100% if every detail is accurate. This was something told to me by the parents of a few local residents there, but what I'm about to tell you is what they remember, and it has haunted that neighborhood ever since. Back in the early 2000s, a wealthy business executive moved to Rani Nagar from Bangalore. He lived with his wife and their 3-year-old son. The man traveled frequently across India, expanding his steel retail business. Initially, their move was supposed to be temporary, just a couple months, but when his project in that region extended to a few years, he decided to invest in property and build a home there. And that's where things started to go wrong. They bought a plot of land at a suspiciously low price, almost too good to be true. The soil and materials used to build the house were sourced locally, mostly mud and clay from a ground not far away. But what they didn't know was that this particular ground bordered an old cemetery, and during excavation, some of the soil near the cemetery wall, maybe even from within it, was unknowingly mixed in with the clay, which was then used to build the house. The family moved in as soon as the house was complete. From the very first night, the wife began hearing things, soft whispers from the roof, strange thuds in the hall, and occasionally dark shadows moving across the corners of her vision. She tried to convince herself it was just part of settling into a new home. She told her husband and even a few neighbors, but no one took her seriously. They thought she was just stressed, or maybe imagining things. Then came the day her husband had to return to Bangalore for work. It was supposed to be just a 3-day trip, but those 3 days changed everything. From the very next morning, she woke up to find the bed slightly moved, not just the sheets, the entire bed by a few inches. She would hear muffled voices at night, sometimes as many as 4 or 5 people whispering in a locked room. When she opened the door, nothing, no one, no sound, just silence. She started locking every room at night, but every morning the locks would be open. She didn't want to scare her husband or disrupt his work, so she kept everything to herself. But deep down, she knew she wasn't safe. Eventually, she had enough. She quietly packed a few clothes, some essentials, and took her son to a nearby rental house. But in the rush, she forgot something back at the house, some documents, or maybe jewelry. So she asked her neighbor to watch her son for a few minutes, and she went back to the house, alone. She never returned. Hours passed. The neighbor, worried, called her husband in Bangalore and explained everything. He panicked. He told the neighbors to check the house immediately. The neighbors gathered a few people and went inside, and there, in one of the upstairs rooms, they found her, hanging from the ceiling fan. No note, no signs of a break-in, just her lifeless body in a house that felt colder than death. Her husband came back as fast as he could, but it was too late. He left the city, took his son, and never came back. Since then, the house has remained mostly abandoned. People who tried living there after couldn't last more than a week. Some said they heard a woman's voice screaming at night, "Where's my child?" Others claimed to see a woman walking across the second-floor balcony, even though no one lived there. Over the last 22 years, at least 20 deaths have been linked to that house. Some say people went insane in their sleep. Some vanished, and a few were found dead in exactly the same room where the woman hanged herself. Recently, a family tried renovating the place, gave it a fresh coat of paint, but within days, they fled. No explanation, no goodbye. Now, There's a coconut tree growing right in the middle of the front entrance, as if even nature itself is trying to block the door. Locals avoid the street altogether during Amavasyas, new moon nights, and parents still tell their children, don't take that road after dark, because even now, some claim to hear crying from inside that house, or worse, a faint lullaby being sung in a voice that's no longer human. Believe it or not, that's up to you, but if you ever visit Rani Nagar and you pass by a house with a tree blocking the door, just keep walking. This story was told to me by my brother-in-law. It's about his uncle, a doctor in a small town in South India. We'll call him Dr. I. Now, this isn't my story firsthand, but I've heard it enough times to know that what happened, which still haunts him to this day. It all began one night, sometime in the early 2000s. Dr. I had finished a long shift at his small roadside clinic and had returned home to rest. His home was right above his clinic. The ground floor served as the clinic, while the upper floor was his residence. Like many homes in rural India, his house had two doors, a solid inner one, and a mesh-covered outer door that you could see through for extra security. Around 1 a.m., there was a knock. His grandmother was the first to wake up. When she opened the inner door and looked through the outer mesh door, she saw a man. It was too dark to see his face clearly, but the man spoke in Tamil, pleading for help. He said his wife was pregnant and in critical condition, that he had no one else to turn to. He needed a doctor immediately. His grandmother hesitated. She didn't want to wake Dr. I after a long day. She politely told the man to come back in the morning, but the man was persistent, desperate. He kept repeating, "Please, she won't make it till morning." All the noise woke Doctor. After hearing what was going on, he decided to help. He packed up his medical bag, some basic delivery tools, medicines, gauze, and stepped out into the night. What he didn't realize was that he might soon regret this decision. The man walked slightly ahead, leading the way, and Dr. I followed. The roads in that area were dark, no streetlights, just dusty paths, trees swaying in the wind, and the sound of crickets. He couldn't see the man's face, just his silhouette and the faint sound of his voice. Along the way, the man kept apologizing for disturbing his sleep. He seemed genuinely grateful. Dr. I said it was all right, and that he was just doing his job, but something felt off. After about 10 minutes of walking, they came to the edge of a graveyard. The man turned and said, "Our house is just on the other side. Going through the graveyard is the shortcut." Dr. I paused. He was uneasy, but he told himself he was being paranoid. Maybe the man lived in one of the small houses behind the cemetery. It wasn't uncommon in rural India, so he kept walking. They were halfway through the graveyard when they passed under a working street lamp, and that's when he saw it. There was no face, no skin, just a dark, transparent silhouette, like they were the outline of a body the darkness itself had claimed. Dr. I froze. He stared, blinking, thinking maybe it was a trick of the light, but no, just blackness, a transparent, dark silhouette, no skin, no face. The figure kept walking casually, trying to hide his panic. Dr. I forced a smile and called out, "Oh no, I forgot something. I left an important instrument back at home. I'll be right back. Just 2 minutes." The figure stopped and turned. Still no face. It replied, "It's okay, doctor. It's not necessary. We can manage." But Dr. I insisted. He said, "I'll lose the patient if I don't have it. I promise. I'll be back." And then he ran. Not too fast, just enough to look urgent. But once he was out of sight, he sprinted. He didn't stop until he reached his home. His grandmother was still awake, sitting in the hallway, worried. He locked the doors, told her everything. Neither of them slept that night. By morning, the fear had dulled, but the image hadn't left his mind. He returned to the clinic, trying to brush it off as a hallucination or exhaustion. Later that day, a local government official, someone like the mayor, came in with his young son for a regular checkup. During small talk, Dr. I casually mentioned the lack of streetlights in the area, how dangerous it could be at night. He didn't mention the dark silhouette, just that he had been called out for a late-night emergency and the visibility had been terrible. The official seemed interested. He asked for more details. Where did this happen? Who called him out? Dr. I hesitated, but eventually gave a vague explanation. The mayor asked him to visit his office after clinic hours, said he wanted to discuss something important. That evening, still shaken but curious, Dr. I went to the mayor's office. What happened next chilled him even more than the previous night. The mayor pulled out 3 folders, all of them marked with medical symbols. Each of them belonged to a doctor. The mayor looked him in the eye and said, "All 3 of these men were called out to emergencies in similar circumstances late at night by strangers asking for help. None of them returned." I felt the blood drain from his face. The mayor continued, "We never found their bodies, never found who called them, just empty homes, and in one case, a single medical bag lying at the edge of the cemetery." Doctor, I didn't know what to say. He left that office with a shock. From that night on, he never answered a call after 9 p.m., no matter how urgent. He made sure to close his clinic early, kept his doors double locked, and never walked near the cemetery again. Some nights, though, he swears he still hears knocking. I come from a small city not too far from Goa. After spending nearly 4 years living in a packed city like Bengaluru, it always feels peaceful to return home. There's something about the silence of a small town, the familiarity, the calm. But sometimes the silence hides things you can't explain. This story happened shortly after I moved back in with my parents. My brother was about to move abroad, and I didn't want our parents to be left alone. Coincidentally, we had also decided to get our family house renovated around the same time. To make the renovation easier to supervise, we moved into a vacant house right across the street from ours. It was a 2-story structure, 1 floor below, 1 above. Nothing too fancy, but growing up, my brother and I had always heard whispers from neighbors about that place being haunted. Of course, we never believed them until we stayed there. The first few nights were normal, but one night, things changed. It was late. We were all asleep. My mom suddenly woke up in a panic, gasping like she couldn't breathe. She said she had felt something hovering near her head, touching her hair. When she opened her eyes, she saw a hand, just an arm, from the elbow to the fingers, right beside her face. No body, just a hand. She screamed. We rushed to her room, but there was nothing there. We tried consoling her, assuring her it was only a bad dream, and eventually she calmed down. Over the next few days, things seemed to go back to normal. But then it happened again. About 2 weeks later, around 2:30 in the morning, we were all asleep when we heard it. Footsteps. But they weren't normal footsteps. It sounded like someone walking slowly, dragging one leg with the help of a cane or stick. The sound came from the top floor of the house, right above us. None of us had the courage to go upstairs. We just lay there, frozen in our beds, hoping the sounds would stop. Eventually, they did. The next morning, I decided to check the top floor. It looked abandoned, just an old dusty room, some cobwebs, broken tiles. But in the corner of the room, I found something strange. A wooden stick, like a walking cane, leaning against the wall. Next to it were some old faded men's clothes, folded neatly. As I bent down and picked up the shirt, the cane suddenly dropped with a loud thud, even though no one had touched it. Panic surged through me. I didn't dare stop to investigate. I dropped the clothes and bolted out of there. But the worst part came a few nights later. While everyone else had gone to sleep, I wasn't feeling tired, so I stayed up reading a novel. Around midnight, I had to use the washroom. The only issue was in this house. The washroom was outside, in a separate structure in the backyard. I didn't want to wake anyone up, so I quietly made my way out on my own. It was chilly, silent. I used the washroom, and as I stepped out, I saw her, a woman, standing about 10 feet away from me. She was dressed in a red sari, long black hair flowing across her shoulders, and she was just standing there, laughing loudly. For some reason, I didn't feel scared at first. I thought maybe she was a relative visiting my aunt's place next door, so I smiled awkwardly and walked past her, avoiding eye contact. I went back inside, picked up my book again, and tried to forget about it. Eventually, I fell asleep. The next morning, I casually asked my mom, "Hey, did someone visit Andy's house last night? I guess maybe." She looked confused and said, No one came last night. Why?" I told her what I saw, described the red sari, the open hair, the laughter. Her face went pale. She called my aunt into the room, and after hearing what I'd said, they told me the truth. Years ago, a woman who lived in that very house had been murdered by her husband. They say she was found hanging from the ceiling of the upstairs room, the same one where I found the clothes and cane. Her husband had a limp and always walked with a stick. I had unknowingly experienced both of them. That very night, we packed up and left, moved into a different house until our renovation was complete. But that place is still there, and I see it every single day from my newly renovated house, from my bedroom window. I want to share something. This one wasn't experienced by me directly. It happened years before I was even born. This is something my grandmother told me. It took place near her home in Kota, Rajasthan, and to this day, it gives me chills just thinking about it. There was this house about 4 buildings down from my grandfather's place, a modest home with a small veranda and a tall channel gate at the entrance, the kind made of vertical steel grills. It was home to a family of 4, husband, wife, and 2 children. Nothing unusual about them. But the house, that was different. People in the colony often whispered about the house. They said a man had ended his life there years before the current family moved in. The place always carried a heavy, unsettling feeling. For a long time, it was only a rumor, until one night, everything changed. It was around midnight when the entire neighborhood was jolted awake by what sounded like a blast. Not just a loud noise, it was an impact, like metal being crushed. My grandmother, along with other neighbors, rushed out to see what had happened. Everyone gathered in the area, eyes wide and confused. Some had brought flashlights, others just stood at their doorsteps. And then someone pointed at the house, at the gate. The tall metal channel gate was destroyed. It wasn't just broken, it looked torn, twisted outward, like something had exploded from inside, as if a force had launched itself at the gate with the power of a wrecking ball. The grills were bent at unnatural angles. Parts of the gate were flung across the street. It didn't look like vandalism. It didn't look like an accident. It looked like something huge had broken out. Neighbors rushed to check on the family. Everyone was fine. They claimed they hadn't even heard the noise. They were fast asleep. The police were called. They inspected the area. No sign of an explosion, no fire, no damage to the LPG cylinder or any wiring, no break-in, no intruder. Just a gate that had been ripped apart from the inside, and no one could explain how. That's when a few elders suggested calling in a priest. The priest arrived the next morning. He didn't even enter the house at first. He stood near the broken gate and started murmuring mantras under his breath. Then he asked everyone to gather the family. What he said next made everyone uncomfortable. According to the priest, a restless spirit had been trapped inside the house for years. It had lived there long before the family moved in. The regular prayers and peaceful environment inside the home had created a barrier, keeping it from attacking the family, especially the children whom it was drawn to. But the spirit had grown furious, starved, desperate, and that night it tried to leave. But breaking out of its dwelling takes immense energy, more than what it needed to manifest. That gate wasn't just broken. It was the price the spirit paid to escape. The priest performed a havan, a fire ritual, and gave the family strict instructions to maintain spiritual cleanliness. The house was repaired, the gate replaced. But even today, when I visit Kota and pass by that house, I can't help but slow down. I stare at that new channel gate and try to picture the scene my grandmother described. I asked her recently if she believed the spirit truly left. She didn't answer. She just looked at the gate, then looked away.